Hello everyone and welcome to another video from Steve Adventure where we'll be reassembling the PM2 you can see here. Batman of course will be supervising. We'll just set Batman over here so he can get back into his spot. But we're reassembling the PM2 after having taken it apart from doing some force patina to the DNT 3 scale, custom scales out of the Czech Republic. These are copper scales and as you can see they do a great job with the various shapes. You can get them smoother. A lot of fun. So the force patina I was doing was just to cover up some of the difference of patina that you get with the pocket clip in place. These are drilled, as you can see, for right hand carry only. One of the things that I really like about these is that you can order them with the lanyard holder without. You can order them left or right, tip up, tip down. They'll drill them any way you like and they fit very well. A difference from other custom scales, you'll see here there's no chamfer for the stainless steel liner to pop into. So we can circle back to that, but it creates a little gap that gives you the copper, the stainless, and then of course the backspacer, which I would say is a performance accessory when it comes to the PM2s because it seems to stiffen up the two scales, straighten them up, and make my knife even more drop-shutty. So a G10 in this case, backspacer, can be a real nice performance enhancer. In any case, I've taken the knife completely apart so that we can see what might be involved in getting one of these things together. In case you're scared to take your knife apart, because you'll see a variety of disassembly videos, but I haven't seen one that takes the knife completely down. Some little things to pay attention to. Of course, I've set my screws out as they come. We'll be applying a little bit of Loctite, which I like to do all at once and right at the beginning. That way it's got a chance to migrate where it's going to. And generally I find Loctite is can be a little bit reactive. So for instance, you can see right here that the Loctite has taken the die off the envelope. So I would be a little bit careful about where you apply Loctite if you're working on a surface that you care about. In this case, we're working on our mouse pad / work mat that was created for us by Fisher Custom Leather. Eric does a fantastic job over there. You can find him on Facebook and Instagram, Fisher Custom Leather. You can see that ours is laser engraved with our Instagram handle. He can do a variety of, graphics, lettering. I can't say anything you'd want, but pretty well anything you might want. And he makes a variety of great products. I'm blessed to carry one of his wallets. The front pocket, which is really a card TARDIS. And we'll be lubricating our knife today with something a little bit strange, insofar as most people are all about their nano oils and what have you. But what I've found is that, frankly, this grease, Tech T Gun Salve, is made for the paintball industry. It's safe for all materials, all plastics, wood, and everything. So it's completely non-reactive. It's got a very, very high film strength. So even just a little bit here that I have on my fingers from touching the outside of the container is exceptionally slippery. And you really can't press your fingers together hard enough to rub it off and not have it be slippery. Very good stuff. I'm sure we'll get some comments about using oils or greases, but this particular product works really well. So things we'll do first is we'll go ahead and put our pivot in place. Pro tip when it comes to any knife, but particularly in this case the PM2, the Fauxvid bronze washers will have a little bit of what I would call camber, insofar as they're very likely cranked from the factory, and they've got a little dent, which you can see right here. There'll be a small dent. Or they may even have some actual curve or doming. And so, by getting that right out of the box, you'll find that it's much easier to work on your knife. Also, the two sides are different because the pivot has a small milled flat spot in it, and frankly I don't remember which side it goes in, but it goes in and locks in place. And I don't think it's that one. I actually think it's this one. There it is. So there's a flat spot right there. Get the two flat spots lined up. So that'll make it easier. So we'll take our washers. Now these washers have been used a fair bit because, of course, I've been fidgeting the crap out of this thing. So your washer goes under your pivot. The pivot goes back in the body or in the side, the stainless scale. Also, I would make note just mentally that it's on this particular side of the knife. So away from, be on the clip side on a right-hand carry. The reason I'm making note of that is it's much easier to make your adjustments for your how stiff your blade is. Well, you're looking to set that drop shutty action. I've found that there's a big difference adjusting from this side that has the chamfer or that notch in it rather than the other. It travels in a straight line rather than being able to move around on a variety of planes. So that's good fun. And we'll take the scale and we'll put them roughly together. And then we'll switch out. I was lucky enough to win this Audacious Concepts driver on one of the Facebook pages that I participate in. It's a beautiful tool. There we go. So we'll get that adjusted about right. Then we can slide the scale into, so the lines are roughly lined up. And we can check that back here with our spacer. Next thing we'll probably install is the blade stop. The blade stop is the larger of the two barrels. You can see one's quite a bit taller than the other. And that wants to go in fairly straight as well. Pick up one of our screws. Get the right driver size, always helps. And that is precision machined, so you'll want to make sure that you get that in there pretty straight. So I'm actually using the screw. I lined up the screw head in the scale, and that helped to square up the barrel as it pulled into the stainless steel liner. And then we can snug that right up. That'll be anchored. Because these are free floating, you'll want to anchor at least one side. And you saw me put the Loctite on everything first. Then we'll use our spacer right here. This one is not go into the stainless scale. Just rides in that void between them, giving you some space. And that one is free spinning pretty good. Turning backwards until you feel the threads click over each other is a nice pro tip there as well, just to make sure you get everything lined up and squared away. And that one's not going to snug up until we get a hold of it on the other side. So there's one side done. And we'll go ahead and we'll apply some of our Tech T gun salve. This is a spectacular lubricant if you're operating in the paintball world. I don't tend to apply it too sparingly because a little extra grease is going to help to defeat the water. And that's not something you need in there anyway. On the blade, I usually apply a little bit in the lock bar path. That way I know it's there. I'll put a little bit inside the pivot. These two, the inside and the outside, are going to scrape against each other, so we want to use both every opportunity to leave as much of the product in there as we can. Detent ball hole's a nice place for moisture to collect, so it's not a bad idea to put a fair bit in there. Certainly not going to hurt anything. Set that down. And blade's in the open position. Do be careful. You can see my edge is pretty polished, and so it could be potentially dangerous to you and me. Make sure we get our washer on the right way around. And again, we'll be able to see that by looking at the discoloration or the crush marks where the factory over-torqued the screw, which they generally do. Then we'll drop our barrel in. And we'll get Batman reinstalled on my cheater loop here. So you can see I opened up. This might be another pro tip here. If you don't want to go through the lanyard loop and I wanted it to be removable, but I didn't want it to be flopping around and coming untied all the time. So by putting a slot in your backspacer, and then it's a small modification to the hole that gives the rope somewhere to go. And this has been done with accessory cord, like that. So we'll get him lined up, and then the whole thing just slides in place. Now you'll notice that it really is tight here and also here, which squares everything up, which is part of why I believe this is a real performance enhancer, because as I said previously, once you put a backspacer in your PM2, you're going to notice that you have a higher capability of it being drop shutty. Some of the sprint runs from DLT Trading, for instance, seem to have a little bit of extra zippity in their doodah. I wasn't sure why, but then once you put a backspacer in, you really start to see that kind of positivity. There we go. Now generally I assemble the PM2 while it's open, because then the spring in the lock bar isn't pushing the knife apart. And with a little "how's your father?" you've heard the whole thing pop together. So this and also the opening stop both slide in and click in place. And because the spring isn't really actively pushing very hard, it'll stay down for you. Second scale, very nicely machined. It's really knife art. I mean, let's be honest. They do add a substantial amount of mass to the knife, but just how awesome they feel is easily worth it. You will notice that the balance point for your knife is going to be further back as well. And if you're too tactical for that, I can completely understand. But having a little bit of extra weight in the palm doesn't feel badly at all. There we are. We want to make sure we get that screw in there right. So we'll go back until we feel the thread drop, and then forward smoothly. There we go. Now where the knife was previously assembled, there's a little extra Loctite still in there, so I had to be super careful to make sure I got that screw straight. In the event you have screw problems, I would absolutely recommend that you contact Spyderco directly. When I bought the PM2, there was a screw missing out of the pocket clip, and somehow the screw had become damaged. And there we are. So we'll snug up the one side, and you flip it over. You'll probably find yourself going back and forth on this particular spot, because the barrel is going to slowly lock in place on one side more than the other. There we go. But as I was saying, I had a screw missing right from the factory. So I just sent Spyderco an email asking where I could buy screws, because I don't mind buying a screw if that's what it takes. They were kind enough to simply ask me my address and send me a screw from Golden, Colorado. Pretty fantastic. So we can see that's a bit stiff. But we knew that was going to happen because we installed everything tight. So I'm now snugging down the round side, and then I'm going to take a little bit out on the opposite. I'm grabbing the lock bar and then rocking the blade back and forth, because that's really how you're going to check for your blade play. The lock bar will tend to take the blade play out, so I feel none. Now I have a little. Back to that square side, and I make my adjustments by tightening, because if I make my adjustments by loosening, then the whole thing may not be seated properly. There we go, that takes it out. Still a little stiff, so we'll go back out and start again. Now when you first put the new grease in, you are going to find that it's a little bit sticky because there's quite a bit of product in there. There we are. I don't mind if it's going to have a little wrist. There we go. Beautiful thing. Nice, that's getting worked in nicely. Perfect. So things that are really, as you can see, I really like these scales. They are spectacular. Things that I noticed pretty well immediately is the G10 wraps over and is recessed so that these stainless steel liners don't show as much. So you get much more stainless steel liner showing. I don't think that that's a bad thing, but it did surprise me a little bit. The action is very nice. The hole where the lock bar moves, there's lots and lots of room, but it's not excessive. The ergonomics are just about exactly the same. It's quite a bit heavier. You can still reach all of the chamfering spots very easily, so all the jimping works really nicely. There's no rough edges on the scales anywhere as they come from the factory. One thing I would say is that this hole or the area where the pocket clip mounts is recessed, so you can see it scalloped down quite a bit. So what that means is your pocket clip is probably going to be a little bit tighter than it was when you first started. By the way, also if you order one of these Chinese pocket clips, you'll see that one side, one of the ears, had to be modified a little bit just to keep it back out of the lanyard hole. Not that that matters to anyone but me. And it really was just an aesthetic choice. It's not anything that you have to be concerned about. The other thing that I liked about these copper scales is that they're a little thicker in the palm. So where the G10 are flat, except for the texturing, they're very flat. I found that these scales had a little extra girth, which I'll be able to show you here once I get this pocket clip mounted. Go. I guess it makes sense that we'd have some trouble at some point. I wouldn't have thought it would be pocket clip screws, but here we are. So the holes in the copper are slightly larger, so it can make it easier just to go back a little bit first, which wasn't working for us. In any case, I'll get that. It is lined up. How odd. In any case, I'll get that back on there later. But as you can see, it's a little thicker than the G10 was. So it feels a little bit better in your hand. It actually, I would say, improves the ergonomics. Now the balance point with the copper on is going to be back here, which is a fairly substantial change from the G10 scales, which is more in this space. But I don't think that you can disagree and say that this is not much more attractive and very unique. And of course, as the patina continues over time, I just can't wait to see what it's going to come. And honestly, that was the whole reason I got into the PM2, was specifically for copper scales. And then once I started doing some research, my son turned me on to these guys, and these are ridiculous. They were quite polished out of the box, so if you're looking for that bright and shiny experience, you can check out my Instagram at Survival Instructor, and you'll see photos when the scales were brand new. So that's about all we have today. I'll get that pocket clip installed, and you don't need to watch that, of course. And thanks a lot for taking the time to enjoy this video. I hope it was even more fun to watch than it was to make. In every case, thanks for your views. Maybe a click or a share it would be encouraged. We'll look forward to your comments, and stay sharp, everyone. Bye for now.